No one warns you about this trap, but it's the reason most people never change. I know because I lived inside it for years convincing myself I was moving forward when in reality I was just walking in circles. That's the cruel thing about this trap. It doesn't feel like failure, it feels like progress. Until one day you wake up and realize nothing in your life has actually changed. And if you don't see it for what it is, it will steal not just your days, but your entire future. So let's begin with how this trap first shows up disguised as effort, hidden inside the way most people use their time. The trap in disguise, this trap, doesn't arrive with a warning sign. It doesn't announce itself with alarms or red flags. It slips in quietly, so quietly you don't notice. At first, it feels like effort. It feels like you're doing the right thing, and that's why it's so dangerous. For me, it began with long hours. I told myself I was building my future brick by brick. I worked late into the night, fueled by coffee, scratching tasks off lists that seemed endless. To anyone watching, I looked committed. I looked focused. People would even compliment me. "You're such a hard worker. You never stop." And I believed it. But the truth, I wasn't making real progress. I was spinning my wheels. I was trapped in the illusion of productivity, working endlessly on things that didn't matter, avoiding the uncomfortable task that actually would have changed everything. I'll never forget one particular night. It was close to midnight. My eyes were burning from staring at the screen all day. My desk was littered with empty mugs and scraps of paper. I had worked for more than 12 straight hours. My body was exhausted, my mind drained. And yet, when I looked back at what I had actually accomplished, it was nothing. Not one real step forward. Just a pile of half-finished ideas, scattered notes, and busy work that no one would remember tomorrow. That's when it hit me. I wasn't failing because I wasn't trying. I was failing because I was trying at the wrong things. I was mistaking motion for movement. And that's exactly how this trap disguises itself. See, it doesn't stop you by making you lazy. That would be too obvious. Instead, it whispers in your ear, "You're working hard. You're doing enough. You're on the right track." It rewards you with the feeling of progress while silently robbing you of the real thing. The cruelest part? The harder I worked, the deeper I sank. I told myself I was building momentum, but in reality, I was just running faster on a treadmill that went nowhere. I was busy and I wore that busyness like a badge of honor. But busyness isn't growth. Busyness isn't change. And that night, staring at my empty results, I felt a crack in the illusion. For the first time, I saw the trap for what it really was. A cycle, a loop, a prison that feeds on your own energy. And here's what shocked me the most. Once I saw that crack, I realized how long I had been living this way. How many years I had been caught in the same cycle. How much time had slipped through my fingers while I fooled myself into believing I was moving forward. That's when I understood something terrifying. This wasn't just my story, it was everyone's story. Because the more I looked around, the more I saw the same trap everywhere. Friends, coworkers, people chasing goals, all caught in the same illusion. Everyone running, everyone busy, and yet so few ever truly changing. And that's what led me to the bigger question. Why do so many people, not just me, never escape this trap? Why people never escape? The more I thought about it, the more I realized this trap doesn't just happen to me. It happens to almost everyone. And the saddest part is that most people never escape it. They don't even recognize it. They live inside it their entire lives, mistaking it for progress, mistaking it for growth, when in reality it's nothing more than a cage that keeps them circling in the same place. Think about it. You know people who talk endlessly about change. They say they are going to start a new business, get in shape, write that book, or finally turn their life around. They dream about it, they post about it, they even take the first few steps sometimes. But in the end, nothing really changes. They drift back into the same routines, the same patterns, the same habits that kept them trapped in the first place. I began watching people more closely, not just what they did, but how they talked about their goals. I started listening to the little phrases they repeated, the excuses they carried with them, the reasons they gave for why they weren't moving forward yet. And what I noticed was terrifying. The trap has a voice, and it's very, very convincing. That voice says things like, "It'll start tomorrow." It whispers, "I just need more time to prepare." It tells you, "I'm not ready yet." Or it tricks you into believing, once things calm down, then it'll focus. These are the lines that keep people stuck for years. These are the lies that convince you you're making progress when in reality, you're postponing your life. And they'll be honest with you. I know those lines because I've said every single one of them myself. I've lived them. I've used them to justify waiting. I've used them to make myself feel better about standing still. And that's exactly how the trap feeds on you. It thrives on hesitation. It thrives on delay. It thrives on convincing you that doing nothing is actually doing something. Most people never escape because the trap doesn't try to chain you down. That would be too obvious. It doesn't stop you with force. Instead, it lulls you to sleep. It hands you comfort. It gives you just enough of a sense of effort to make you feel like you're doing the right thing. And then it whispers, "Don't worry, you're fine. Stay where you are. You're safe here." And of course, who doesn't want to feel safe? Who doesn't want to believe they're already doing enough? That's the cruel genius of the trap. It rewards you with the feeling of progress while silently stealing the real thing. You think you're moving forward, but really, you're standing still in the same spot year after year. For me, this trap often showed up as preparation. I would spend hours reading books, taking notes, watching videos, studying strategies, and at the time, it felt good. It felt like growth. I told myself, I am learning, I am getting ready, I'm setting myself up for success. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't growing, I wasn't building, I was hiding, I was distracting myself with information so that I didn't have to face the uncomfortable reality of action. That's how the trap works. It convinces you to confuse consumption with execution. It makes you believe that because you're busy, you're progressing, and because you feel busy, you don't question it. You don't stop to think about whether anything is actually changing. You just keep going, day after day, telling yourself that it's enough. But here's the painful truth. Staying busy doesn't mean you're moving forward. Staying safe doesn't mean you're growing. Staying comfortable is the same as staying stuck. And staying stuck is the reason most people never change. I learned this lesson in the hardest way possible. I remember telling myself over and over again, I'm not ready yet. I just need a little more time. And then one day, I woke up and realized an entire year had passed. A year of circling, a year of waiting, a year of making excuses, a year of lying to myself. And the crushing part? Nothing in my life had changed. Nothing. That was the moment I finally asked myself the question most people are too afraid to face. What exactly am I waiting for? If you don't start now, then when? What magical day is going to arrive where everything suddenly aligns and you finally feel ready? The answer is obvious. That day is never going to come. Most people never escape the trap because they never ask that question. They keep waiting for the perfect moment, as if it's going to show up one morning like a miracle. But the perfect moment doesn't exist. It never has. It never will. It's just another lie the trap tells you to keep you standing still. And that's why people never escape, because they confuse preparation with progress. They confuse busyness with growth. They confuse the illusion of safety with real change. And by the time they realize it, years have already passed, decades sometimes. And they never get those years back. And this is the cruelest part. The trap doesn't just keep you stuck. It convinces you that you're free. You walk around believing you're making progress, but you're still in the same place you started. And that is why most people never change. And that realization leads to the next discovery. The trap doesn't just disguise itself as effort, it disguises itself as progress. It makes you believe you're changing when in reality, nothing has shifted at all. The illusion of change, the most dangerous part of this trap isn't that it keeps you busy. It's that it tricks you into believing you're actually changing. And that illusion, that's what destroys most people's chances of real transformation. Think about it. How many times have you started something new and felt unstoppable? Maybe it was a project, a new habit, a morning routine. In the first few days, you felt alive. You told yourself, this is it. This is the thing that will change everything for me. That rush of motivation made it feel like the future was already yours. But here's the painful truth. Most of those moments don't lead to real change. They only give you the feeling of change. And when the feeling fades, the progress vanishes with it. That's what the trap does. It feeds you small, surface-level wins and convinces you they mean more than they do. You start a new diet, and after a week, you feel proud. You sign up for the gym, and for a few days, you're on fire. You pick up a book, and for a moment, you feel enlightened. But then life settles back into its old rhythm. The newness wears off, the fire dies down. And before you know it, you're back where you started, only now you're weighed down by disappointment. I know this because I lived it over and over again. I would pat myself on the back for small victories, thinking they were signs of deep change. I celebrated starting things more than finishing them. I thought showing up once meant I had transformed. And every time I did this, the trap grew stronger, because the illusion of progress is more dangerous than failure. See, failure wakes you up. Failure stings. Failure forces you to reflect. But the illusion of change lulls you to sleep. It convinces you that you don't need to push harder because you're already doing enough. It makes you settle, and settling is the death of transformation. He'll never forget one moment that opened my eyes. I had been working on a project for months. I told myself I was making progress. I told my friends I was building something big. Every day, I chipped away at it. But when I finally stopped and looked at the results, I realized I had nothing. No product, no breakthrough, nothing to show for the time I had poured in. That realization crushed me. I thought I was changing. I thought I was building something meaningful. But in reality, I had been circling the same shallow steps over and over again. I wasn't moving forward. I was decorating the walls of my cage, convincing myself I was free. And that's what the trap does to you. It convinces you to celebrate starting instead of finishing. It convinces you to value effort over results. It convinces you to believe that motion is enough when what you really need is direction. That's why so many people wake up 5 years later and realize nothing in their life has truly shifted. They thought they were changing. They thought they were moving forward, but they were living inside the illusion of change. And let me tell you, the illusion is more dangerous than doing nothing. Because when you do nothing, at least,
You know you're stuck.
at least you feel the pain of stagnation. But when you're trapped in the illusion, you feel satisfied, you feel comfortable, you feel like you're making progress. And that's why you don't push harder. That's why you don't question it. That's why you don't escape. The payoff for me came when I finally saw it for what it was. I realized that surface level wins are not the same as transformation. I realized that real change doesn't happen when you start something. It happens when you keep going long after the excitement is gone. It happens when the motivation fades and you show up anyway. It happens when you build consistency that compounds over time. And that's the truth most people don't want to face. Real change is boring. Real change is repetitive. Real change doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like showing up day after day, even when no one is watching, even when nothing exciting is happening, even when you don't feel like it. And that's why so few people ever find it. And for you, this is the turning point. Because until you see through the illusion, you will keep circling. You will keep settling. You will keep mistaking the feeling of progress for the reality of change. And that realization leads to the breaking point. There comes a moment when the illusion finally collapses. For you, it might not happen in a loud explosion. It won't come with sirens or fireworks. It arrives quietly, almost too quietly, and that's what makes it hit so hard. For me, it happened late one night. The house was dark, the world was asleep, and I was sitting at my desk, staring at piles of notebooks, scattered plans, and half-finished projects. I had been working for months, maybe years, convincing myself I was building something important. But when I looked around, I realized I had nothing real to show for it. That silence was heavy. It pressed down on me, forcing me to face truths I had been avoiding. And in that silence, one question echoed in my mind: what have you actually changed? The answer was devastating: nothing. I had been running in circles, chasing the feeling of progress without ever touching the reality of it. The weight of that realization crushed me. And this is where you might find yourself too. You think about all the hours you've spent busy, tired, stretched thin, and yet, when you really look at it, nothing has shifted. The goals you keep postponing, the dreams you keep promising yourself you'll start soon, the version of yourself you could already be by now, if only you hadn't been trapped in the illusion. The truth burns, because in that moment you realize you are not just wasting time, you are wasting yourself. That night I couldn't hide anymore. The lies I told myself that I was preparing, that I was waiting for the right moment, that I was building slowly, they all collapsed. And what was left was raw, painful honesty. And this is the breaking point. It isn't comfortable. It isn't inspiring in the moment. It's ugly. It's heavy. It's the mirror you've been avoiding shoved in your face. And you have two choices: look away and slip back into the trap, or face it and decide that enough is enough. That night, I decided. Enough pretending, enough circling, enough hiding behind the illusion of change. I wasn't going to wait for the perfect time anymore. I wasn't going to chase the feeling of progress. I was going to force myself into real progress, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. And that decision, that was the crack that let the light in. Because the breaking point, as painful as it is also the beginning. It's the moment you finally get honest with yourself. It's the moment you see the trap for what it is. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. And that's where the real escape begins, not with a massive leap, but with one small, almost laughably simple shift that changes everything. The escape begins the morning after your breaking point. You don't feel powerful. You don't feel inspired. You feel hollow. It's like a hangover from the truth. You finally admitted how much time you've wasted, how long you've been circling, and the weight of that realization sits heavy on your chest. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom, it strips away all your excuses. There's nowhere left to run, nowhere left to hide, the trap is exposed, and once you see it clearly, you're forced to choose. You either surrender to it or you fight your way out. For me, fighting back didn't start with some dramatic transformation. There was no lightning bolt, no instant reinvention. It started with something so small, so ordinary, that part of me almost laughed at it. I gave myself one protected hour a day, just one. 1 hour where I wouldn't lie to myself. 1 hour where I wouldn't hide in the comfort of busyness. 1 hour dedicated to facing the real work, the uncomfortable, important things I had been avoiding. And that's where your escape begins too. Not by doing everything at once, but by protecting one simple hour. At first, it feels strange. You sit there in silence, no distractions, no excuses, and you ask yourself, what's the one thing I keep putting off that would actually move me forward? And then you start there. But the resistance will be brutal. The first few days, your mind will fight you. You'll want to check your phone. You'll want to go back to emails, to research, to planning all the little things that make you feel productive without actually changing anything. Your brain will scream for the comfort of the old trap. And yet, something powerful happens when you push through. That 1 hour, just 60 minutes feels different. It feels heavier, more meaningful, because for the first time in years, you're not circling, you're not just moving, you're actually moving forward. In those sessions, you'll face the things you've been avoiding for months. Difficult conversations, real decisions, the kind of actions that carry weight, the kind that make you uncomfortable. And every time you push through one of them, the trap loosens its grip on you. Here's the truth. Escaping the trap doesn't start with doing everything. It starts with doing the one thing that matters, over and over again, until the habit of real progress replaces the habit of false progress. That's how it began for me. Not with a grand plan, not with a complicated system, but with one simple hour protected like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did, and over time, that hour grows stronger. It becomes your anchor. The rest of your day can still be chaotic, noisy, full of distractions, but that one sacred hour grounds you. It reminds you that you're no longer circling, you're building, you're changing. The trap doesn't disappear overnight. It never does. But with every protected hour, you break its hold. With every uncomfortable action, you prove to yourself that real change is possible. But here's the thing, the trap doesn't go quietly. Once you begin to escape, it fights back harder than ever. And that's when you'll meet its deadliest weapon, resistance. The resistance that fights back. You think the hardest part is behind you. Once you begin protecting that one sacred hour, you think the battle is won the moment you finally break free from the illusion and sit down to do the real work. But that's when you discover something far more dangerous. The trap doesn't let you go without a fight. It digs in deeper. It whispers louder. It sends every weapon it has against you, and its strongest weapon is resistance. At first, resistance feels small. A little voice in your head that says, check your phone for just a second, or you're tired today, you can skip this 1 hour. Sometimes it's even kinder, telling you, you've worked hard enough already, you deserve a break. And the cruelest part? That voice doesn't sound like the trap, it sounds like you. I remember one morning when I sat down, determined to use my hour. I had my notebook ready, my plan clear, and then I heard the ping of an email notification, just one. I told myself, let me check it quickly, it'll only take a minute. 30 minutes later, my focus was gone. My hour had dissolved into nothing. That's how resistance works, not by stopping you outright, but by leaking your focus drop by drop until there's nothing left. And it's not just in your head. Resistance shows up around you too. Friends who don't understand why you're suddenly unavailable. Family who think you are being obsessive. Coworkers who push you back into old habits. The world doesn't care about your sacred hour. It will interrupt you, distract you, and pull you in 100 directions if you let it. But here's the truth you need to understand. Resistance doesn't mean you're failing. Resistance means you're finally moving. You don't feel resistance when you are circling in the trap. You only feel it the moment you start breaking free. I had to learn this the hard way. There were days I almost gave up. Days when the voice in my head was so loud, so persuasive that it nearly dragged me back into the old cycle. But then I reframed it. I began to see resistance as a signal. If I felt that inner pushback, it meant I was pressing against the wall of the trap. It meant I was exactly where I needed to be. And when you see it this way, everything shifts. You stop running from resistance. You lean into it. Every time you feel that discomfort, that urge to quit, You can tell yourself, this is proof, this is evidence, this is the sign I am on the right track. The payoff is powerful. Resistance no longer has to scare you, it can fuel you, because the harder resistance fights, the closer you are to real change. And that's when something remarkable happens. You begin to feel the difference between fake change and real transformation. What real change feels like for most of your life, you probably haven't known the difference between fake change and real change. And I don't blame you, I didn't either. I thought they were the same. I thought getting motivated, starting something new, feeling that burst of excitement, I thought that was change. But I was wrong. Fake change is shallow, it's surface level. It's starting a diet on Monday and quitting by Friday. It's buying a book and never finishing it. It's setting goals at the beginning of the year and forgetting them by February. Fake change feels exciting in the beginning, but it doesn't last. It gives you a sugar high, then drops you lower than before. But real change feels different. And I'll never forget the first time I experienced it. It didn't come with fireworks. It didn't come with a sudden burst of motivation. It came quietly. One morning, weeks into protecting my one sacred hour, I realized something strange. I wasn't fighting myself anymore. The resistance was still there, but it wasn't winning. I had shown up so many times that it started to feel normal. Consistency was no longer a battle. It was becoming part of me. And that's how real change begins for you, too. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It sneaks in through repetition. It shows up when you realize you don't need to force yourself anymore, because it's simply who you are now. I remember sitting at my desk one day, looking at the work I had actually finished. And for the first time in years, I felt proud, not of the idea of progress, but of the reality of it. I had results. I had something tangible. And I realized this is what change actually feels like. Here's the difference you need to see clearly. Fake change makes you feel good in the beginning, but leaves you empty at the end. Real change feels hard in the beginning, but it leaves you stronger at the end. Fake change feeds on bursts of motivation. Real change feeds on identity. And that's when it clicked for me. I wasn't just doing things differently. I was becoming someone different. I wasn't just forcing myself into discipline. I was becoming disciplined. I wasn't just practicing consistency. I was becoming consistent. That's the power of real change. It doesn't just shift what you do. It shifts who you are. And when that shift happens, the trap can't hold you anymore, because the trap thrives on illusions, on surface level habits, on shallow victories. But when you change your identity, you break free from its grip completely. That's the moment you begin to feel true transformation. Not a rush of excitement, not a short burst of effort, but a deep, quiet strength that whispers, "This is who I am now. This is my life now." And once you reach that point, you finally understand the ultimate reward, the real payoff of escaping the trap. The payoff of escaping the trap, when you finally break free from the trap, the first thing you feel isn't motivation. It isn't even excitement. It's clarity. For the first time in years, you know exactly where you're going, and that clarity changes everything. Your days feel lighter. You don't wake up carrying the same guilt that's been weighing you down, the guilt of pretending you're making progress when deep down you know you aren't. Instead, you wake up with focus, with purpose, with the confidence that every hour you protect is pulling you closer to the person you're meant to become. Here's the truth nobody tells you. Once you stop feeding the illusion, real change happens faster than you think. One focused day becomes a week becomes a month, and before long, you've built momentum so strong it feels unstoppable. I saw it in my own life. I saw it in my work, in my relationships, in the way I carried myself. But the biggest shift wasn't external. It wasn't the results. It was internal. It was the peace of finally being honest with myself. The freedom of knowing I wasn't living inside a lie anymore. The power of realizing I had taken my control back. And that's the payoff waiting for you too. Because most people never get here. They stay stuck in the illusion. They confuse motion for movement. They confuse busyness for growth. They never see the trap, so it owns them for life. But once you escape, you can never go back. Once you've tasted what real change feels like, you'll never again settle for circling in place. You'll never accept the illusion. You'll never tolerate being stuck. And that's the truth no one warns you about. The trap is why most people never change. But once you see it, once you face it, once you break free, everything shifts. No one is going to save you from it. No one is going to hand you the perfect moment. But the moment you decide to escape, that's the moment your real life begins.